Very
Eric
strong.
Bledsoe got traded to the Clippers. Rondo and Pat Bev to Memphis. But then Memphis traded Pat Bev to Minnesota for Jared Culver and Juancho Hernan-Gomez. I want to get your guys' opinions from each of the team's standpoint, from the Clippers, from the Grizzlies, and the T-Wolves. What do you think?
Well, start off with the Clippers. I guess that trade means Reggie Jackson will be inserted as a starting point guard for the season, and I guess they needed another point guard off the bench. I still would have liked Pat Bev. I feel like his defense is better than Bledsoe's at this point, and his three-point shooting far exceeds Bledsoe's. But I guess, getting a guy who, another creator of offense, a guy who handles the ball a little bit better than Bledsoe, a little bit better than Pat Bev, who still can play defense at a high level, I guess that was good, bringing a guy off the bench. I just don't know with guys like Paul George, Nicholas Batum, Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann. I just, I feel like you still could have kept Pat Bev. But for the Clippers, you still get a guy who can still contribute. He's probably going to have a chip on his shoulders being traded, and this is a team that can definitely, when Kawhi gets back, compete for a championship. So that's going to be on his mind. For Memphis, they got Jared Culver. So I think that's the best thing about it. They get a young guy who still has time to grow and develop. They trust in their staff. They trust in their player development team. Jared hasn't panned out in Minnesota, but a new environment can definitely change a player and change your perspective on them. So I think this is a good environment for him. There's room to grow. They're talking about trading Dylan Brooks, so there's room to grow for Culver. He can play the 2. He can play the 3. Shades of the 1. He's a good player. He just needs some development. As for Minnesota, trading Rubio, bringing in Pat Bev, Minnesota plays no defense. This was a win-win. He shoots the 3 ball at a high level. He can play defense at an elite level. You bring in a guy who can does that, play next to D'Lo, who plays absolutely no defense. I think this is kind of a win for Minnesota. They feel like, and I think we all know, when their team is healthy, they're a very competitive basketball team, and they can make some noise in the West if the team just stays healthy. And I think Pat Bev can contribute to that with his 3-and-D play.
I definitely agree with what you're saying with Minnesota. I love the move for them. You bring in a guy. I just don't want to reiterate what you're saying, but it's exactly the truth. They play no type of defense. Their identity is being an offensive juggernaut with Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, D'Lo, obviously. I feel like
Beasley.
There we go.
Malik Beasley.
He's
who's
nice. Definitely really good at basketball. And now, regardless of that, now Pat Bev comes into the picture. Someone who's going to get on these guys. Someone who, the reason why I think was traded from the Clippers was because he was becoming too much of a headache, I think, for them. I feel like they were tired of dealing with all his shenanigans on the court, costing them in sense of bad timing, technical fouls, being too emotional, which I'm not against. I love emotion on my team, especially when you are such a catalyst on a side of a ball that not everyone really cares about all too much now in 2021 basketball. Now, you bring in a guy to your locker room that's going to be on your ass every single day to play defense. Anthony Edwards is going to benefit from this mostly. I feel like Anthony Edwards is, I don't want to say similar in mindset to Pat Bev, but similar in the sense of I'm here to do a job. I don't care how you guys perceive me. I'm me. That's it. That's Pat Bev. And I feel like he's going to benefit mostly from this Pat Bev signing. Not like Pat Bev's going to have this huge impact. Say that one more time?
You said signing. Trade.
Excuse me. 100%. Thank you. Not that it's going to have a huge impact in terms of leadership and in terms of winning, but in terms of how they're going to play. I feel like that's what they need truthfully. Now you look at the Clippers getting Eric Bledsoe. I have grown to like this trade. At first, I was like, "Oh, they gave away Rondo and Pat Bev. They really are completely trying to change what they're becoming, truthfully, because they saw what they were offensively. They know they have really good defenders in PG and Kawhi. Marcus Morris was a really good scorer for them too during that playoff run. So they figure, you know what? We already have solid defenders. Pat Bev was a great defender for us too, but you know what? Eric Bledsoe isn't a slouch defensively either. And Eric Bledsoe is a better offensive player than he is. The only issue that I have with Eric Bledsoe is he goes ghost and bad. And like you don't even know he's on a court. When he was on Milwaukee, it was hard to watch him play sometimes, which is why initially I was skeeved out by the move. But I understand because he's not going to be asked to do what he was asked to do in Milwaukee. He's going to be an off-the-bench point guard. Reggie Jackson's going to have the responsibility, and he wants that. He's earned that after this past postseason. Now, for Memphis, I would have liked them to keep Pat Bev. I feel like Memphis obviously has John Moran. Obviously, they just drafted Zaire. They had an obvious hole at shooting guard. Obviously, Pat Bev is a point guard, but regardless of that, John Morant, I feel as if he could play the 2-1 transition. He's got decent size. He's more than athletic enough. His scoring abilities is definitely there. You can put Pat Bev at the 1, Ja at the 2, but still have Ja be the primary ball handler. It wouldn't have been that big of a difference. And then you still add Pat Bev's defense there, which is what I feel like they definitely needed there. You know, they have Steven Adams now instead of Valanciunas, which clearly they're going defensive minded, even though I think Valanciunas was definitely overlooked in that sense defensively. Definitely better offensively than he is defensively. But Steven Adams is better defensively, just lacks the offense. Pat Bev at least can do both. Is an amazing defender, is a really good shooter. Instead, you go and you get Jared Culver, who really hasn't shown much up until this point, showed brief flashes of being a solid player. I just don't like taking a chance on him, especially when you just saw Ja go and give Utah a decent series. He played extremely well, and the Grizzlies at least didn't embarrass themselves. Utah was the better team, of course. But in the grand scheme of things, I just would have liked to see Pat Bev stay in Memphis, see what, if that was an impact move for them. But ultimately, they didn't end up doing that.
The Clippers got a better playmaker, shot creator, but a worse floor spacer and defender in Eric Bledsoe. I am higher on the move than most. He is just a backup point guard. I'm not thinking too much into it. The Grizzlies, and maybe Rondo can be a mentor. I think
he's not supposed to stay.
Okay, that's great news. I think Rondo, because of his playoff run in LA, got overrated.
No doubt.
Went to Atlanta, sucked. Went to the Clippers, wasn't good. Now Grizzlies don't even want him either.
He's done.
Pat Bev, at first I thought it would have been better if he stayed with Memphis, but I think they have a younger version, more lengthier version of Pat Bev and DeAnthony Melton, who can stretch the floor and play defense. Tyus Jones is there. Really, this is about getting Jared Culver, former 6th overall pick. I love him out of Texas Tech. He hasn't panned out thus far, but there is still hope. We have seen Memphis develop these guys, so hopefully he can get better. But what's holding him back is his jump shot. He needs to improve as a jump shooter. He had an awkward shot in college as well, but he has to improve that three-point shot if he wants to become a good NBA player. I love this for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Patrick Beverley brings floor spacing. He brings toughness. He brings culture. He brings defense. I think Patrick Beverley is going to help out the Timberwolves in a sense that they're going to have more of an identity. Sure. Right now, it feels like an offensive cluster. There's just a bunch of offensive talent. We're going to outscore you. That's it. I think Pat Bev brings some stability in. Okay, we can score, but we have to lock in to win. And Patrick Beverley has definitely been on teams that have won. Houston, the Clippers. He's a winning guy, and I think he's going to bring a lot to Minnesota. You look at what he did against Devin Booker. I mean, when Devin Booker was guarded by Patrick Beverley in the playoffs, he went 4 for 15, 0 for 2 from 3, shot 26% from the field. Anybody else guarded Devin Booker gave them fits. 19 for 41, 46% from the field, 5 for 15 from 3, 33% from 3. And then when Patrick Beverley was on Donovan Mitchell, 45 possessions, Mitchell had 10 points and shot 23% from the field.
Yikes.
So Patrick Beverley, okay, D'Lo, you're not a great defender, but we could put Patrick Beverley on any team's opposing guard, and he's going to play defense. Yep. Anthony Edwards, he can play defense too.
Sure.
And I think they're going to start Jalen McDaniels this upcoming season. Jaden McDaniels. Yes, I do think they're going to start him. And he's a heck of a defender who has a lot of potential as well. So now on the roster, you have 3 defenders. Cat and D'Lo can take breaks on defense. They're more of offensive players anyway. They don't play much defense.
Got a Koji coming off the bench. He's a good defender.
Yeah, so, I mean, there are different things Minnesota can do because you can start Pat Bev, have D'Lo at the 2, Edwards at the 3, McDaniels at the 4, Cat at the 5. Or you can start D'Lo, Beasley, Edwards, McDaniels, and Cat and have Pat Bev come off the bench. I think it makes more sense to have Beasley come off the bench and be that six-man type of guy, the same way that Clarkson is for Utah. Beasley will have the ultimate green light. He has shown he can average 20-plus points per game on any given night. So off the bench, he can average about 16. You get that punch because if Pat Bev is off the bench, you have Taurean Prince, Okogie, defenders, floor spacers, but they can't create their own shot. Naz Reid, good offensive player. McLaughlin might not play much with Pat Bev there now, and Vanderbilt. Yeah. You don't have a scorer off this bench. It's better. It makes more sense for Minnesota to start Pat Bev, get that defense, and get that offense from Beasley off the bench. So there is a lot of different things Minnesota can do. They have talent, and I think Chris Finch being there now is a better coach than David Saunders. They can do something. When they're healthy, they're a good team. But the problem is that they're not healthy. Cat is injured or D'Lo is injured. They have to find a way to stay healthy. But when they're healthy, they're good. And I think Patrick Beverley was exactly the player that they needed on this team.
100%, man. Listen, I'm with you there. There's no way to sugarcoat it. I just think that Karl Anthony Towns needs to be a leader this season. Going into this season, if they really want to be contenders, regardless of the talent that they have, if Karl Anthony Towns isn't a leader in that locker room, they're not going to win anything. Because as talented as he is arguably the most gifted big outside of Jokic, because Jokic can do it all. But this man, Karl Anthony Towns, is clearly the best big shooter in our league. You could argue he's the best scorer, the scoring big in our league. It's just a matter of, is it going to translate to wins? And we haven't seen that up until this point.